So now we're here in Photo Mechanic, where we can take a look at the JPEG files straight from the camera. These images are taken with the Canon 6D Mark II with the EF 200mm f2.8 prime lens, and I took these images at f2.8, all of them. All images we are going to see are all taken at open aperture f2.8. I want to see how blurry is the background, I want to see how good is the sharpness, I also want to see does the focus hit. I took kind of all these images with the dual pixel AF on the 6D Mark II. So I don't have any focus points, I just click on the touch screen, or I select the face detection when I photograph people, which we will take a look at in a moment. Now, it's autumn now, it's at the end of October, and this is just a park in front of the house. I just went out and took some images to capture this beautiful moment, the colors. These images, I think, are really well, and there is not much I need to edit. We will go into editing in a moment, where I'm really curious to take a look at the portraits I took and how we can edit them. But before we go into editing, because I know not everybody will like edited images, or my style of editing maybe, so I thought let's take a look at the unedited JPEG straight from the camera, which we do right now. So these are all the unedited files from the 6D Mark II. You see it up here, Canon 6D Mark II, 200mm, aperture 2.8, shutter speed 1/1000th of a second. And I'm really happy with these images. Now, I had an idea about the 200mm lens and what I wanted from it. And I wanted from it nice blurry background. I wanted compression. I wanted intimacy. I wanted to get an image where you kind of not see so much, you just see just a little bit of the real world, but that which you see in a really beautiful aesthetics and in a really intimate way. And we will take a look at the portraits in a moment to see how that works in portrait photography. Now, when we look at lenses and we look at the Canon lineup, there are some phenomenal lenses like the 50mm 1.2, 85mm 1.2, 135mm 2.0. I have all these lenses and they are all phenomenal. Why go with the 200 2.8? Well, I always have a list of lenses or gear that I like to test, just for me as somebody who loves photography. It's not necessarily because I need it, but it's because I want it, and I have these things in my head, and I know once I make them real, it's out of my head, there is space for new stuff. And so it was just time for me to get this one lens, and I'm really happy with how the images look like. Now, these images is Corona time now, and I didn't want to meet up with people until now, just for the photography side. So I thought, let me go out. It's just after the day I got the lens. Let me go out with myself. I just have the same outfit and just change jackets. And the way I took these images is right here. So I have the Canon 6D Mark II here on a tripod. It's a very small tripod that fits into my camera bag. Here I have a remote control and another one in my hand here. I have the flip out screen, so I can see from the distance, am I in the frame or is my head cut off, like here in the beginning. I can see even from the distance if I am in the frame or not. Now, because of the flip out screen and the face detection, I can photograph myself very easily. I still see myself here on the screen, and these are the images straight from the camera. And this is how it looks like, and I think the images turn out really nice. I just wanted to test out the lens just for myself. I wanted to see everything shot at f2.8 wide open. I wanted to see how far do I have to get away to get a full body portraits in vertical mode and in horizontal mode. I wanted to see how close can I get to the lens. I wanted to see how blurry will the background be. I wanted to see how good is the sharpness, how good does the autofocus work with face detection even when I'm further away. And kind of all these images turn out really well. This is my selection of files, and we will go into Lightroom in a moment to take a look at how we can edit them. But I know some people don't like edited images, or they don't necessarily like my style maybe. And so I thought, to give everyone a certain look on the images, let's first take a look at the unedited ones, which I think turn out already pretty nice. Now here, for example, you have an idea. We have a person photographed whole body with the horizontal, with the vertical camera, so the camera is upside, and we still get blurry background. We still have a beauty bouquet and intimacy. Now when I use other lenses, 50mm, 35mm lenses more on the wide angle side, when I try to get a picture of somebody with the whole body in it, there is no longer that blurry background, there's no longer that intimacy. You pretty much can see everything that's happening in the background. Where here, you still have that really dreamy background that looks kind of artificial. It doesn't look like real. It looks like a painting in the background. And this is what I hoped I would get, and it is exactly that which I got. Beautiful sharpness, excellent autofocus, phenomenal face detection. I mean, on some of these images I'm pretty far away, and the camera had no problem capturing me, even shooting wide open at f2.8. And we will go into Lightroom in a moment, but before that I thought, let me just go through some of these images, the JPEG files. Here you have the settings. The settings are kind of all the same for every photo shoot, because I just set the settings in the beginning and then I shoot, and the setting is always the same. There's no auto white balance, there's no auto anything. Everything is manually. So 2.8, ISO 400, 200mm, 60 Mark II, face detection on, 1/640 of a second, and now all images will be with these settings. And here you actually see the exact same moment like here. Let's just take a look. So I'm here. This is kind of... Sorry, here I have the glasses on. But you get... you can see the distance here. I can still see myself here on the screen. And it's a really nice workflow. It's super easy to take self-portraits. If you're interested in it, I've created a whole workflow with editing and which cameras to use and which accessories and where the light is and where to look, and a lot of details about getting great images if you're interested in taking images for yourself for Instagram, something like this. This is an easy way to do. You don't need to pay somebody, you just need a camera and a lens and a remote control, and this is what can come out of it. Now I think the 200mm lens, the f2.8, is not that common. You will find many reviews about the 50mm lenses and 35, 85, but even the 135 is a beautiful lens, a legendary lens, but it's not that common, not as common as 35, 50 and 85. And the 200mm prime lens is even less common. So what other lenses are there compared to this? There's the 135 2.0, which is a phenomenal lens, which gives a very similar impression like this, also on the telephoto side. But this has still more compression and still a very different look as well. There are two other options that we may take a look at, which is the Canon EF 200mm f2.0, which is a 6,000 euro lens. So it's very expensive, it's very heavy. It's not something that I can put on this tripod here and let it there, because it might fall down, or it will just it will be too heavy on the front that it falls to the front. So it's not that practical. It's super expensive. There's a 200mm f1.8 version, there's a 200mm f2.0, and I think there are even a variety of lenses with IS, without IS. I don't think these are lenses that you can compare because of the price and weight difference. So I think the lens that much more is in comparison to this is the 70 to 200 2.8. Now this is a 200 2.8, and there is a 70 to 200 2.8, or actually 3 if you just look at the EF lineup, with image stabilization, which this lens doesn't have. So why do I buy a 135 2.0, 85 1.2 and 200 f2.8, if I can get all of these focal length, not with these apertures, but I can get all of these focal length with the 70-200. Why don't I go with the 70-200? Now, I don't like the weight. I don't like the size. It's a little bit more expensive, or more on the expensive side. And it's not my type of style of photography to use zoom lenses, which is something very subjective. It doesn't speak of the quality of the lens, but I don't like using zoom lenses. So I like to use prime lenses. It makes everything more easy for me. And here you see now the images with the 200mm, all at f2.8 unedited. We will go into Lightroom in a moment, but I thought I'd give you my ideas about the lens and share some images here. These are all taken by myself with a tripod and a remote control. I hold the remote control somewhere in my hands. It's very small, you don't actually see it, but just so you understand that it's only me there taking pictures, there's no one else. And because of coronavirus, I didn't want to meet with people, or not with many people. So I thought the easiest way to test this lens is just to photograph myself. Get very close to it, get further away. There are two buttons on the lens. The one is the autofocus button, so you can put the autofocus on or turn the autofocus off. And the other button is for the focus distance. So you can choose either focus from 1.5 meters to infinity, or focus on 3.5 meters to infinity. Now, when you want to focus on something that's very far away, like you want to photograph cars in the distance, or planes flying by, or birds, you know you will not focus anything that's within 1.5 meters. So you can go with the 3.5 meters to infinity. Then the focus will be even faster. If you are like me right here, and I go and I'm walking towards the camera, and I come closer and closer and closer, and I will somewhere be very, very close to the camera, I can set the camera to 1.5 meters to infinity, which takes a little bit longer to focus, but still is super fast. But it can be even super faster if you go to the 3.5 to infinity distance. So you have this button there. There is no other button, so it's very easy. And I love the look of the lens. I mean, the autofocus, I don't have to look into the camera, I look to the side. The background looks beautiful, you don't see anything. It's just a creamy, it looks like a painting in the background. It doesn't really look real here. That's what I was looking for, that's what I was hoping to get. And the lens actually delivered in a beautiful way. So here you now got the images unedited straight from the camera. I wanted to give you an insight into how the images look like, especially photographing people. I think many people are interested in this lens photographing people and how the background will look like. And I'm not so much a big fan of photographing flowers or trees, because you cannot necessarily see how that then will look in photographing people. And so I wanted to give you many images with this lens where I photograph a person. In this case, it's myself. And we will now go into Lightroom and edit those images and see how well we can edit them and how the final image will look like. So see you in a moment.